Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party Network. This week it's an interesting double bill as we look at two movies on the opposite end of the spectrum. The latest movie from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Black Widow, and the newest indie movie from Azazel Jacobs, French Exit. So Dallas, how are you feeling about this double feature?
I'm excited to talk about it because I think we both kept our opinions on both of these films off social media and off the various chat forums, so we actually have no idea what each other actually think about this for probably the first time in ages, actually, because normally, a new film, we want to talk about it, but I think it's an element of surprise, and I think it's safe to say that, yes, these are two wildly different films, so I'm going to be interested to see which one you preferred more.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive into Black Widow first. It's the 24th Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, and it's only the second time a female Avenger has been in the lead in the form of Black Widow, and it's the first with a singular female director, with Kate Shortland directing. So obviously, for those who haven't seen it, though based on the box office numbers, it feels like most people have, Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, confronts the darker parts of her ledger when a dangerous conspiracies with ties to her past arise. Pursued by a force that will stop at nothing to bring her down, Natasha must deal with her history as a spy and the broken relationships left in her wake before she became an Avenger. So Dallas, what were your expectations going into Black Widow, and were they met or were they surpassed?
I think it's an odd one because looking at it, it feels like it should have been a fairly inconsequential entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because, if it wasn't for Captain Marvel, it seems that in order for a female character to get a solo movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they had to die. Because basically, this is set just between Civil War and Infinity War. But at this point, everyone knows that Black Widow, sorry, spoilers if you haven't seen Avengers Endgame by now, but, Natasha Romanoff sacrificed herself to get the Soul Stone in order for the heroes to rewrite the universe to stop Thanos. So she is dead, and it was basically this was her solo effort, even though, she has been around since 2010 and Iron Man 2, and had a wildly differing variety of haircuts in that time. I don't know if we're going to rank the haircuts later on, who knows? But so it was I've always enjoyed what she's done with, at times, a very underwritten part. So it was nice to see her finally get her due. She's like the one sort of character who's been there the longest that has not had a solo movie. So it was nice to see. It's just a shame that it's come after essentially her death, and we all know where it's going to go. But, is interesting to see, is there something that they can do with it, to make it interesting. I mean, it was meant to come out a year ago, and it was really meant to start Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As it turns out, we've actually pivoted to where the TV shows have come out before that. But essentially, none of that seems to have mattered, apart from the introduction of one very minor character, which we'll get onto at the end. Were my expectations met? Yes and no. I think that there was a lot of good stuff in it. I think that, despite, having, the female director and essentially being able to throw off the shackles and knowing that as long as you reach one particular point by the end of the show and it's not relying on the usual tropes of throwing in the cameos of all the famous people. There were rumors at one point, that Robert Downey Jr. was going to turn up, Chris Evans was going to turn up. It doesn't rely on them at all. It's basically, this is Scarlett Johansson's movie, Natasha's story. It did that very well for the first two acts. Third act, it does fall into the usual Marvel Cinematic Universe third act problems, but we can go on to discuss that. But I had a good time. Did I feel that it essentially was a 134-minute passing of the torch to Florence Pugh as the next star of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Yes, I also think that as well. But what about you?
Yeah, I had very kind of similar reactions to you. I enjoyed myself, like, in a very, like, 3 out of 5 kind of film way. Like, I just watched it and I thought, I quite liked how, I know some of the complaints are it lacks some of the big buzz of sort of an Avengers movie or something like that. For me, I quite liked how low key it was. I was kind of like, yeah, just, I suppose that's where it's similar to that third act. The third act is a bit overblown, typical Marvel fare. You know, all it was missing was a bit of a blue light in the sky. But I kind of enjoyed where it was like just keeping it about this family and their issues and sort of yes, I know
There's
it's
that
still
word
triggered
again.
in my head. Yeah, just the hijinks that they were getting onto. Like, I was into that. I didn't think the film needed to be like plus 2 hours, but I really enjoyed it. And yeah, it's one of those ones where it's slightly frustrating that, you know, this is your first big Black Widow movie and it's basically a backdoor pilot to, you know, Florence Pugh becoming sort of like an Avengers lead. And I think there's something to be said about the post-credit scenes now setting up TV shows as opposed to movies, but I suppose that's the universe that we're in just now. But I think it's one of those things I enjoyed. I feel almost bad to say, like, the highlights of the movie for me were Florence Pugh and David Harbour, and Scarlett Johansson was good. I just quite enjoyed some of these new characters that we were getting to play with, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do in the future, and hopefully they'd return.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the first two acts are definitely the strongest. I mean, you mentioned the blue light in the sky. I think most of the Marvel movies will feature an ending that has either a blue light shining up in the sky or something falling to the ground, and this goes into the falling into the ground category. Um, I liked that the first two acts were a bit more gritty and less reliant on CGI. It had very much sort of more of that sort of Winter Soldier feel that you had the sort of hand to hand combat, you know, motorcycle chases. It was definitely trying to fit Black Widow into that sort of Bondy, sort of Bourne esque sort of style. I mean, you've even got even though she's technically not the lead in the first opening prologue, it did feel almost like a sort of Bond prologue in many ways, where you had this sort of mini sort of adventure taking place where this family who, what's the oh no, is it the Americans? There's a TV show that where there was a couple of Russian spies pretending to be an American family or something like that. Yeah, it felt like they just basically ripped that off, but you know, so be it. But they had that, and then they had escaped to get out, and then bringing in the wonderful Ray Winston with a dodgy Russian accent, of course, and wearing board shorts and stuff like that. But then, I mean, I've heard a lot of people praising the "Smells Like Teen Spirit" cover, the Nirvana cover of the opening credits. Really liked that. I liked how in the beginning they really actually turns out that, you know, Marvel are very very good at what they do and have been playing a long game. I saw someone on Twitter posting the fact that Loki in the Avengers specifically mentions Dracov's daughter as one of the bits of red in Natasha's ledger, and this brings that back to it, and you know, explores the whole sort of Budapest thing a bit more. You know, I'm glad that in a way that, you know, it didn't, you know, try to bring in sort of Clint Barton and Hawkeye. It tried to make it as much Romanoff story as possible, but bringing in this, you know, similar as we talked about the other week about Fast and Furious, this aforementioned, you know, did mention she had essentially like a family beforehand, but of course now she does. She actually has connections with a lot of people, and like you say, some of that was the highlights. I think just the bickering around the table is a true highlight. You know, you've got Rachel Weisz, who, I mean, is it going to be spoilers or not? I thought she was good. She turned out to not be playing the role I expected her to be playing. I think actually I'm not going to. There's a role which at this point has been mentioned. It's kind of like, well, who is it? You know, it's someone behind a mask the whole time. Was saying I thought it was going to be her. Turns out it's not. It's someone else. But the person, I then was able to figure that out once I realized she wasn't it, because if you have an actor in the opening credits named and they haven't appeared so far, well, it's probably going to be them. And then I was able to work out, based on who that actor was and how it would fit in within the story, what was going to happen. So I liked the way that it came around, but again, I was sort of one step ahead just because, you know, I'm always processing these things in my mind, going, that person hasn't turned up yet. Okay. But yeah, and I mean, I would have liked to have seen a bit of Julie Delpy return. I know that she was in, I think it was Age of Ultron, as one of the people behind the Red Room. I thought it would have been nice to see her, but clearly she was a one and done, and clearly probably didn't really enjoy her experience in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and couldn't be coaxed back for a couple of million thrown at her. She's clearly, her standards are too high.
Yeah, it was certainly one of those ones where I kind of was thinking, oh, I wonder if Julie Delpy will appear. But for me, I think the one thing that really kind of annoyed me, I think you touched on it there, like, I suppose it's a slight spoiler, so kind of word of warning. Like, it's obviously that kind of one of these big things in the Ledger is this young girl that got caught in the crossfire of this bombing that Black Widow did, and the regret that she had for that. And I always found that quite interesting, this idea that she had this ledger and she was trying to forever make up for that, and it kind of dogged her. But I felt it was undermined by the fact that the little girl, and you kind of expected, it actually has survived, on in some other form. And, that really annoyed me, where it's like, even, I suppose it's very rare in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that characters stay dead. Even when they stay dead, you can have them have their own spin-off movie where it just gets backdated. That really let me down, where it's like, it would have added a bit of edge, where it's like, it gives a character a clean getaway. It's, it makes something that's a character like a spy, a Black Widow that should have loads of shades of grey. It gives them a nice out, which I think is just a little bit uncomfortable and frustrating. It just, there's no need to make it that clean.
Yeah, no, it does. It was this point where you've got someone who's tortured herself this whole time, and then it turns out, hey, actually, you didn't really need to torture yourself because that person's still alive, albeit in a slightly tortured form themselves. Was it a fate worse than death? Who knows? I mean, I guess that could be argued, but I mean, it also. I mean, you've got all this. The problem with continually going back in time, once you've already set up all these movies, is you do start to have issues with retconning the universe and stuff. And you've got this subplot within the movie where Yelena Bolivares, Florence Pugh's version, essentially, are they all Black Widows, or is that the name that she gave herself? Were they all called Black Widows? I can't remember now.
Well, you can't really hold me to account, because I thought, what's her name, WandaVision or whatever, Scarlet Witch was called Scarlet Witch the whole time.
Until she was finally called Scarlet Witch.
So don't ask me, because I've clearly...
Okay, well, the Red Room assassins, let's put it, were apparently all being mind-controlled, and then you needed a special gas in order to release them from this mind control. However, Natasha Romanoff was put into the same school, but apparently she was able to leave without having to need this mind gas. So I'm not sure at what point they started using mind control nerve agents or whatever in order to do this. Some point between Natasha and Yelena, yet they both went into the school at the same time because they were both basically put into a box. And essentially, there's this huge plot about essentially how Ray Winston is essentially, human trafficking in a way in order to create spies and stuff like that. And it certainly looks the way towards the end of. Okay, I'm going to throw up a spoiler warning, I guess, now, because we're talking about stuff which is going to happen after. So if you haven't seen Black Widow, pause now and you can come back. Okay. Essentially, it is setting Florence Pugh's character up potentially for her own series or movie. Probably it feels like it would work better as a series, and I'm not sure if that's the way that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is going to go, whether it is more on the Disney Plus TV series route, like you say, the end credit spoiler sting pushes itself towards the Hawkeye TV series. But I was wondering, with the way that the current cinematic climate is would they ever make the same kind of money again on a Marvel movie where they can continually put budgets of 200-300 million on to the movies? Are they going to get that money back? I didn't think they were. I thought they were going to pivot towards investing in TV shows where you've got a longer run and you can keep your money back with Disney Plus subscriptions. Of course, however, it seems that they've done over $200 million this opening weekend worldwide, which includes $60 million on Disney Plus, which is the first time I think they've actually ever put a figure to the number of people who paid to watch a film. They did that to ensure they got a over $100 million opening weekend at the US box office. I think it was just a tactic to do that. So maybe the other films have not done as well, but I think it just shows that you can't keep Marvel down, and there's still they've got a lot of legs left and a lot of gas in the tank on this particular cinematic universe. But I think Florence Pugh's got a future series, and it brings me to the point where I think my biggest issue with the Marvel Cinematic Universe following Endgame is how everyone seems to know everything that happened in Endgame, even though there is no way that they could. So in the WandaVision TV series, they're all talking about how, well, Captain Marvel nearly took out Thanos single-handedly, and it's like, well, how did you know that? Were you there? You weren't there. Was somebody filming it? Was somebody live streaming it? And then you've got Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character who turns up at the end basically saying, here's a photo of the person who was responsible for Natasha's death, and shows her a photo of Clint Barton, and it's like, were you on that planet? How do you know? It's like everyone post Endgame watched Endgame and now knows what's going on. It's like there's no way that all these characters could know everything. It's like they've got a handy sort of catch up streaming service where they can just check back on all the important things that happened up to this point. And I'm like, I mean, I guess it's shorthand to keep the plot moving, but it does ring slightly hollow and false at times, I think.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think almost we were kind of talking about that third act there. I just wish it was a bit small scale. Like you talk about kind of Ray Winston's character, about these young women being kind of trafficked, really. Like, you don't need to make it some sort of like big global espionage thing. Like, make it smaller. Like, this film doesn't need to be 200 million. You could make it even 100 million, and just go really small about sort of these women being trafficked and set up as spies. I think of a film that I actually think is pretty underrated. Red Sparrow, for example, really leans into that sort of like indoctrination of women, setting up as spies. Like, that's interesting, and it feels like it's leaning into that at the beginning, especially when you watch those opening credits.
Red Sparrow, the Black Widow solo movie that came out before Black Widow got a solo movie. Yeah, a Russian spy who learned ballet and all that sort of thing. Yeah, it was unfortunate timing, but I mean, yeah, because essentially, if you look at it like the Bond structure, I mean, she's invading the villain's lair, he tells her his plan and whatever, and it works out, but the Bond film, at least they sort of have, practical sets and stuff, and at least, Blofeld's, secret lair was never, in the sky and started falling down from the clouds. So, obviously, there's Moonraker maybe goes slightly towards that level, but, at least the effects were not too CGI heavy.
Yeah, so it's safe to say I think we probably enjoyed the movie as a 2-hour trip to the cinema, but it's not probably going to leave a strong impression like some of the other Marvel movies.
Mid-tier Marvel for me. I mean, I think somebody said, it's like Marvel, they've never really made a bad film. It's just that this was, it was a good film, but there was nothing, like to propel it to the top tier. Yet there was nothing particularly bad or glaring about it to put it near the bottom. It's just kind of, I'm glad that she got a solo movie. It was a good ride, but it did feel too much to me like Florence Pugh is going to be a major star, and we want her to be the next face in Phase 4 or Phase 5 or wherever it is. And we've been championing Florence Pugh since the very beginning, so it's like we already know she's a star. You don't need to tell us.
Yeah, 100%. So we can now dive into another movie which featured someone that has starred in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that is Michelle Pfeiffer. And she joins Lucas Hedges in French Exit, about an aging Manhattan socialite living on what's barely left of her inheritance as she moves to a small apartment in Paris with her son and cat, which might be possessed by her dead husband. So, Dallas, we've not spoken about this one yet. This was one I think I was maybe more keen to check out than you and to cover, but what did you make of French Exit?
I went into French Exit knowing that it was about the aging socialite and her son moving to Paris with a cat. I did not know that the cat was apparently possessed with the spirit of her dead husband. So when that storyline rears its head sort of about halfway through, I'm like, oh, right. and then they kind of really lean into it, and I'm like, huh. But I mean, I was there for the Michelle Pfeiffer lead performance, which I'd heard very strong things about. I mean, there was even rumblings of potential Oscar nomination and stuff like that. So I mean, I think she's a fantastic actress who doesn't get the number of lead roles and starring roles that she should get at her age. And by the way, it has to be said that she still looks absolutely phenomenal. It was like even like Stardust, when she'd been away for about 10 years, she came back and it was like, wow. And even now, again, about after another 10 years, wow. I think she's amazing. I mean, yeah, probably most of us have had a crush on her since like Batman Returns and whatever, but I think she is fantastic in it. Lucas Hedges, one of A24's poster boys, he's great in it. It's an odd movie. I can see it definitely wouldn't be for everyone, but I think I had a pretty good time in it. Yeah, it clicked with me. So yeah, no, it was definitely worth a watch for me. What about yourself?
It also clicked with me. What I knew going in was also very limited. I knew it was sort of about them going off to Paris, and that was about it, really. But I knew kind of from, I think, the tail end of last year that there'd been a bit of negative and mixed reviews kind of coming out of the New York Film Festival, and friends that had seen it weren't really sort of waxing lyrical about it. But it was one of those things I was still really keen to see it for kind of a couple of reasons. Like a couple of years ago, we had the director on our other podcast to talk about The Lovers, which was a film he'd done for A24, and I think there's something that the director Azazel Jacobs does really well that not many people are doing, and that's making films with like older kind of characters. And it's so rare that we get that. We're so used to kind of these multiplex films where it's young, hip people, take Black Widow, for example. But, we have something like The Lovers, for example, which is about a much older kind of couple. It leans into that sort of, we've spoken about it before, that grey pound that, you want to get audiences in that are maybe kind of see themselves reflected into these films. And I just felt so frustrated thinking, I remember when I first saw it announced on Twitter, where it was like Avenger Endgame star Michelle Pfeiffer to star in this movie French Exit. And it was like, but she's only in it for like 2 seconds, and like she's such a great actress. Why has she been reduced to that's what she is now? A little kind of cameo in an Avengers movie, where she's like a great actress that has been, kind of let down badly by Hollywood. And Hollywood is filled with so many great older actresses that are barely getting any kind of work, or maybe just kind of thrown in as kind of side characters. You just look at sort of her kind of filmography the past few years, like she pops up in like Murder at the Orient Express, she pops up in the Avengers movies and Ant-Man and stuff like that. But you think of things where she stars in like independent movies where it's like Mother or French Exit, for example, in the past decade, and she like really excels, and you're like, I want to see more of that, not like the Dark Shadow stuff. It's so
she's just I want more of the what lies beneath. That's what I want people to take a chance on her and give her that, because she's proved time and time again that she can easily handle the roles. And there was probably a time like right around Batman Returns that she was probably like one of the go-to like leading ladies and stuff like that. So it is just a shame that they aren't getting the roles. And like you say, Azazel Jacobs he's clearly grown up on movies with the likes of Deborah Winger and Michelle Pfeiffer, and recognizes the talent there, and showcasing at least someone is taking the chance to be allowing them to show what they've still got.
Yeah, exactly. And what I liked about the film was I kind of compared it to another film I rewatched last week. I guest on a podcast where I was chatting about Where Did You Go, Bernadette, an Annapurna film where it's pretty poor. It's not a great film by any stretch, but it's an interesting kind of film in terms of film distribution and everything that's going on between it. But I won't bore anyone with that. But it's a similar movie about an aging kind of, socialite, very, woman of leisure sort of thing, but in that thing, like the character's a bit too kooky, it's a bit too turned on. Whereas sort of for French Exit, it kind of works. Like it's very much a certain type of film, and then it becomes another one where you hear a cat talking, and it's like taken at complete face value. It's not an awkward thing, it's just a natural plot development. and I enjoyed how it lent into the French farce element. Like, it reminded me of like episodes of Frasier, for example, where there's more and more people getting into the living room and things are becoming more convoluted, and this person's connected to this person. There's been a misunderstanding about this, and I was into that sort of stuff. Like, it was watching it, just going, this is just enjoyable to watch. Good actors act, watching these theatre actors come together, thinking, oh, I recognise that person from like a really small role in Casino Royale, or oh, it's her from Patty Cakes. And these people, where they haven't been given the huge breaks that they deserve, and they're all hysterical. And it's not a fantastic or amazing movie, but it's really enjoyable, and I had a really pleasant evening watching it. And I'd like to see more movies like this with older characters, with older actors, and I'd be happy enough to go see them. I think Azazel Jacobs is a great director. He just doesn't do the greatest amount of films. I hope he continues to make more films. I think it's like every 3 or 4 years at the moment. So yeah, we'll see what he does.
Yeah, no, I really like the sort of the third act of the film, essentially, like you say, where more and more of these characters start arriving into or drawn into the plot, and then for some reason or another decide that they need to all stay in the same apartment, to the point where the woman whose apartment it is coming, how many people are actually staying here? And then someone else walks in the door, and you've got like a private eye trying to find the medium who can talk to cats, and then she arrives, and then you've got the kooky new friend, and then you've got the ex fiance, Imogen Poots, turning up. It's like when she was in the beginning and then went away, it was like, oh no, surely that's not the last we're going to see of Imogen Poots. She turns up again, which was great. And you've got a great cameo from Tracy Letts as the former husband, and voice of Cat. So he'd worked with Jacobs on The Lovers, so it's nice to see that connection there. Again, I mean, I actually saw it kind of almost as a companion piece to Breakfast at Tiffany's, in a weird way. And that she was a socialite. I mean, the book makes it slightly more explicit that Truman Capote basically is, Holly Golightly was essentially like an escort, but she sort of was in high society. She had this cat. So I liked it, like where she's maybe sort of fallen on hard times later on in her life and is trying to reinvent herself in Paris or something like that. I thought there was similarities in the characters there, which was nice. And yeah, I mean, it sort of hints at there's a huge amount of sort of sadness in tragedy, and Michelle Pfeiffer really sort of manages to hint at it, but not overplay it. Like, some people probably would have probably gone into slightly more of the sort of hysterics and stuff like that. She sort of undersells it, but is still be able to sort of nail the really sort of truly emotional moments where at the end you're hoping it doesn't go the way you think it's going to go, but it potentially does. But it leaves it slightly. I really enjoyed sort of like the sort of one of like the final shots of just her with a cat sort of slowly walking behind her, which it sort of leans into the sort of fantastical element. But I think the strength of what Azazel Jacob does with the screenplay and the tone and stuff like that is that kind of stuff works. It won't work for everyone, but it certainly worked for me, and I'm excited to see what he does next. And hopefully it's not too
I'm the same.
A gap between this one and the next one.
So, like we discussed at the beginning, which one did we enjoy more? What did you enjoy more, the big Marvel movie or this little kind of wacky indie movie?
I would probably both have them at around sort of 3 out of 5, I think. But I enjoyed them for completely different reasons. Yeah, I'd say it's probably a tie, I think, for me. Just because, I enjoy them both. For French Exit, one I would completely have enjoyed if I'd ever seen it at home. Black Widow, I certainly enjoyed it more at the cinema, and then, I mean, I'm never going to pay £20-30 to watch it on Disney Plus at home. I think it deserves the big screen treatment, but I think French Exit, I mean, certainly up in Aberdeen, it was on in one multiplex for one showing a day. Not many people are going to see it, but I think, if we can at least have maybe sparked a bit of interest in you and you want to catch it when it does come to streaming and stuff like that, I think you'll have a very enjoyable evening, maybe with a glass of French Beaujolais and some cheese, perhaps.
Oh, sounds good. Well, it's one of those things. It's already out in VOD in America, so
Get that US iTunes account going, eh?
exactly, yeah. And it's one of those things like you look at what's kind of coming up this weekend. You have things like Space Jam 2, the fourth in the Purge series, all these things. It's like, it's good that there's like, it was only on a couple of screenings a day, even here in Edinburgh. But it's good that there's a film out there to appease people like that. And I can't help but think with the multiplexes returning to kind of normal and the
I think it's yeah, it seems to be returning far quicker than I would have expected to the 8 out of 10 screens showing Fast and Furious and Black Widow and very little else at the moment. So.
Yeah, there was a great tweet the other day where it was like all about the discourse you usually see on Twitter, where it was like, if you're tired of if you're tired of sex in movies, well, you'll love what's on at your local multiplex. So yeah, that's certainly felt very true. Sadly, unfortunately, the past few weeks, but. We'll be back next week where we're going to be joined by a couple of special guests to chat about a new British indie movie, Giddy Stratosphere, and then we'll be back the following week all together with Kim to talk about the Fear Street trilogy. So be sure to tune in for the next couple of weeks. So we'll speak with you then. Bye.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.